Jack, I want you to draw me like one of your
Stormtroopers. Well, Rose, you're in luck, because today that's exactly what you're going to get. Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of The Happy Heretic. And today what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how I paint these quick and dirty Imperial Stormtroopers from the Star Wars Legion box set. It's a very easy paint scheme. You can see it gives, this is a finished one that I've got here. It's very quick and uses 3 colors and gives you some pretty good results that you can leave as is or punch up as desired. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just dive in, and I will explain the process a little bit for you and explain some of the colors I use. All right, so let's go ahead and knock out the base coat first. Now, the first step in any process is, of course, priming your Mini. And for this one, I just use, you can see I just used a Gray Sear primer from Gabe's Workshop. That's the one that is specifically formulated for contrast paints, which I will use here in just a moment. You can use whatever primer you want, any gray primer you want. Obviously, if you're using a lighter or a darker primer, that's going to change the results a little bit for you, but it shouldn't affect the end product too much, and you'll see why as we go on. Now, once I get the the primer done, we go ahead and base coat this Mini with Apothecary White contrast paint. One of the contrast paints that I use frequently because I use it on literally everything I paint that's white. It gives some pretty decent shading. You do kind of, with this one though, I don't do too thin coats like everybody says for contrast paints. You know, everybody from Duncan Rhodes all the way down to pretty much anybody you ask will tell you to use too thin coats for contrast paints because that's how you get the best result. For this one, Apothecary White, though, I like just slathering it on there and just washing the entire Mini in the Apothecary White, and that's what I'm doing here right now. You can do the too thin coats if you want. I just use it straight from the pot. I don't thin it down or anything like that. Yeah, this is essentially the first step in the process. It's the quickest step in the process. Alright, so we got the base coat finished, we got the Mini slathered in Apothecary White, and now we just kind of leave it off to the side to dry, or if you're batch painting these, you can move on to your next one and get that knocked out of the way. Either way, give it about 20-30 minutes or so, make sure it's fully dried, and then we will move on to the next step. All right, so we can see the Apothecary White is now dry. We've got kind of a bluish gray tinge across the model. We got some of the definition picked out here as well, some pretty decent shading going on with it. So now the next step is going to be to go ahead and dry brush with white. I use Army Painter Matte White just because I like it a lot better than any of the Games Workshop white paints, aside from the white contrast paint, but well, it's more of a gray, but you can use whichever white paint you want. The key here is to just dry brush it across the Mini. That way it hits the raised areas and it keeps a lot of the shading that the Apothecary White gave us in the previous step. And that's it. That's the dry brushing finished. We got a nice white armor going on here right now. We could leave this mini as it is and just be perfectly fine with it, but I always felt that it needed a little bit of an extra kick. So let's move on to the next step here, shall we? All right, so the third step in our Stormtrooper journey is going to be to wash this bad boy with Army Painter Strong Tone. Again, you can use whichever shading you like. You could use a black ink if you wanted to do it. You could even get fancy and do some pin washing if you wanted to get fancy with that. But I like using the Strong Tone just because, again, this is quick and dirty. We're not looking for Golden Demon level of painting here. We're looking to get something onto the tabletop, something that looks decent, that we can be proud of. And Strong Tone, I've found, gives the entire model a pretty good shading. The only thing is you do have to be kind of careful with the Strong Tone because it can pool up on you in some really weird areas. And you can end up, if you're not careful, with some pretty bad splotches that are really, really, really hard to fix later on. But just keep an eye out for that and be aware of that, and you should be fine. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy taken care of. All right, so that's the Strong Tone wash done on the Stormtrooper. He was looking kind of brown and dirty. We don't want to leave him that dirty, so we'll go ahead and move on to the final step. All right, and now that we've got this Stormtrooper washed with Strong Tone, we've let this dry. Again, give it about 20 minutes or so for it to be fully dry. You want to make sure that it is fully dry before you go in on this last step. But what I do for this final step, you can see the Stormtrooper's looking pretty brown. We don't want a brown Stormtrooper necessarily, so I will go ahead and hit this again with my matte white for a final dry brushing, and you can go as heavy or as light on the dry brushing as you want. If you go heavier, obviously it's going to take you longer, and you're going to get but you're going to get whiter armor. If you don't dry brush as much, you're going to get more of a dirty look, which might be good if you're trying to possibly recreate the remnant Stormtrooper look from the Mandalorian TV series. If you haven't seen that, you definitely should. But let's go ahead and get this dry brushed here, get this taken care of. You might notice, by the way, that the there's not as much shaky cam as in the previous scenes, and this scene the lighting is completely different. I actually ended up having to change my filming location for this, which actually I think works out for the better, and I'm probably going to use this for future videos. But anyway, let's go ahead and finish this guy up, and I'll talk to you again once we're done with him. All right, and we are done with this bad boy, and as you can see, we've got some nice shaded white armor that will look pretty good on the tabletop when you get a whole bunch of Stormtroopers ranked up like this. Bonus, this took me about an hour and a half to do top, so it's a pretty quick paint scheme as well. Now, there's still a bit left to do on this guy, of course. Got to hit off all the black parts that a Stormtrooper would normally have, so the gun and the cloth spaces between the armor plates and that sort of thing. But yeah, he's pretty well done, and didn't take too long at all. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Both of those things will help me out quite a bit, and I will see you all next time.